We're joined from London by Simon Johnson. He is the CEO of the Jewish Leadership Council and Community Security Trust, and he joins us live. Sir, thank you for joining us here on the program. As you heard in that report from Clarissa Ward, the CNN investigation has revealed that anti-Semitism is thriving in Europe. For example, one finding, more than a quarter of Europeans surveyed believe that Jews have too much influence in business and finance. I mean, how did you feel when you hear these findings?
Well, Christy, firstly, I'd like to congratulate CNN on commissioning this important survey. My reaction to that is one of depression and some surprise. If you think about it, the vast majority of people in Europe will never and have never met a single Jewish person. In the United Kingdom, we represent 0.5% of the population. In France, it's 0.7%. In Germany, it's 0.13%. And therefore, these sorts of old-fashioned, ancient racist stereotypes that have been around Europe for centuries are proving remarkably hard to shift. And I think that this shows that despite investment by a number of governments, including our own, in Holocaust education, in education on tolerance and religious freedom and understanding, this is clearly not filtering throughout the whole of Europe. And that, in many ways, shows us just how much work we still have to do.
And why is this so hard to shift? Anti-Semitism has never disappeared in Europe. So why does it persist?
Well, it's remarkable that it does, given that the consequences of hatred, bigotry and discrimination, the Holocaust, are still fresh in many minds. And the fact that I think it proves that its culture, its education, and it really is a failure by governments to shift the forces of bigotry and hatred. And unfortunately, in recent years, we've seen those. We've also seen a number of murderous attacks on Jewish communities. And therefore, despite, I think, a lot of good intentions by a number of governments, it is absolutely clear that far, far more work needs to be done.
So what's the solution here? You know, how we could talk about integration, we can talk about improving education, but how can it be rolled out in a comprehensive and effective way when there are still so many pockets of intolerance out there?
Well, let me talk a little bit about what happens in the United Kingdom. I mean, our government has invested in a charity, the Holocaust Education Trust, and such that Holocaust education is a major part of the school curriculum. The government pays for students to go out to the concentration camps in Central Europe with the Holocaust Education Trust. And of course, there's a major investment in Holocaust Memorial Day and the construction of a new Holocaust memorial in the centre of London. That's sort of integrated, institutionalized education, I think, is very, very important. And I think I would call on other governments to look at what we've been able to do. I think it's also important to try and remember that although this survey paints a very gloomy picture, there are places in Europe where I think it is a great place to be Jewish. Next week, for example, the Jews will celebrate the festival of Hanukkah. And here in London, I will be one of 5,000 people that will gather in Trafalgar Square in the heart of central London to celebrate the festival and to watch a lighting of the Hanukkah candles, something which over the centuries has stood as a platform and a fight back against the forces of religious persecution and against bigotry. But I think that what is absolutely necessary here is for governments across Europe to stem what we see as a rising tide of bigotry, hatred and discrimination, which is not just occurring against Jews, but against many other peoples in Europe. And it is incumbent upon governments and leaders to slap down on this wherever it arises.
Yeah, there are bright spots out there in the fight against intolerance. Simon Johnson, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your work. Now, our week-long look at